Welcome in. Belly up, have a seat, and grab a drink as we talk some Wingman fantasy football. Welcome into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you, who may be watching or listening to today's show. This is episode 69.
69.
And we are at the bar with Ken T, a.k.a. Tompa Brady. And before we get any further along, let's make sure that everybody is in the room. Wingman Assemble! Now that everyone is here, I want to wish you all a happy Friday morning, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, as this episode is jam-packed. In this episode, we will set the slate for the weekend's primetime games, check in on the player news and practice reports, go over this week's matchups, and check the activity of our waiver wire. We will also see who's on top of the newest power rankings and dive into the mailbag. But first, I have a big announcement, and I keep forgetting to mention this, that the trade deadline is this Saturday. That means trades accepted before Sunday will be processed 2 days after they are accepted. So if you want to trade for a player who's going to play this Sunday, you're going to need to accept the trade before Saturday. So Friday night at 11:59, and you will be safe to get a player traded on your team for the Sunday games. Now let's check in on the players, or let's check in on the news and notes for the week. All right, guys, we have only a few top players out this week due to bye weeks, as we have the Falcons, the Colts, the Saints, and the Patriots are all off this week, which means this is going to make it very tricky for They Took Our Jobs to set a quality lineup this week. All right, let's set the schedule for this weekend's games. On Monday night, we have a Battle of Kelsey's and a Super Bowl rematch as the Philadelphia Eagles travel to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, and that game's at 8:15 p.m. on Monday night. The Sunday night game is the Minnesota Vikings heading out to the Mile High City to take on Denver, the Denver Broncos, and that game is at 8:20 p.m. Unfortunately, there are no more Sunday morning games as the Europe games are done for the year. Thank goodness. And for the Thursday night game, we have the Cincinnati Bengals who travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. And we had 7 players in our managers' lineups tonight. We had Waddleway had his special teamers going, as he had Justin Tucker and the Bengals defense in his lineup. King George had the Ravens QB Lamar Jackson in her lineup. Mac Daddy Twos had the kicker Kevin McPherson from the Bengals playing in his lineup. And we had Red Sox Nation with Joe Burrow and Zay Flowers up against Tompa Brady's Jamar Chase. As for other player news and practice reports, all right, some bad news to start with. We had Cleveland's quarterback Deshaun Watson has had shoulder surgery, and he is now done for the year. Cincinnati wide receiver T. Higgins was inactive for the Thursday night game in Baltimore, and Houston running back Dameon Pierce has still not practiced, and he may miss yet another week. Minnesota wide receiver and number 1 overall pick Justin Jefferson has been practicing, but it's still unclear whether he'll make the return in Week 11. Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow left the game early on Thursday night with a wrist injury, while the Baltimore tight end Mark Andrews also left Thursday night's game early with an ankle injury, and he was not able to return. Houston wide receiver Nico Collins returned to practice and is trending towards getting back on the field, but his teammate Houston wide receiver Noah Brown has not yet practiced this week, and his status for Week 11 is now in question. Matthew Stafford has returned to a full practice, and that is good news for Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, well, as Puka Nacua also returned to a full practice. New York Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson has been limited in practice all week, but he should be good to go for the Week 11 games. And Pittsburgh wide receiver Deontay Johnson returned to a full practice on Thursday after missing Wednesday's practice. All right, guys, let's find out who's playing who in this week's matchups.
This week's matchups.
All right, in this week's matchups, we're going to start off with the 7-3 and number 1 seed Amazing Spidey is playing against Nick's Waddle Away, who is at 4-6. We have a battle of two teams tied for the last playoff spot as Jimerson's Red Sox Nation at 5-5 is up against Ken's Tompa Brady, who is also 5-5. We have Bernie's Team B.
I'm Cuban B. Yes, Cuban B.
At 2-8 and his last chance for hope to make the playoffs up against the sliding Katie's King George at 6-4, as she is currently on a 3-game losing streak. Our number 2 seed, Paul's Cubert Rage at 7-3, is up against Corey's Mac Daddy 2s, who is looking to rebound after a devastating loss last week to Reggie's Lion Eyes. Mac Daddy 2s is at 4-6. In another battle of two teams tied for our final playoff spot, we have Alex's They Took Our Jobs at 5-5 up against the hottest team in the land, Reggie's Lion Eyes, at 5-5, coming in with a 5-game winning streak. All right, guys, let's check in on our waiver wire. We had 7 waiver claims this week, with 3 NFL players receiving multiple bids. Our first player was Devin Singletary, went to Mac Daddy 2s for $15, and he outbid Lion Eyes, who put a $12 bid in. The Washington defense went to Mac Daddy 2s for $5, and there were no other bids for that defense. Noah Brown went to Amazing Spidey for $4. Miami defense went back to Amazing Spidey for $3, and he outbid Team B's $2 bid. Trey McBride, stud tight end for the Arizona Cardinals, went to Lion Eyes for $2. And Jason Sanders, kicker for the Dolphins, went to Team B for $2, beating out a $2 bid from King George. That means that Team B had to use his waiver priority to get the tiebreaker bid, and he acquired Jason Sanders. And Matthew Stafford, in a second round of waivers, went to Lion Eyes for $4. All right, guys, now it is time to check in on our power rankings.
By the power of Grayskull.
I'm living in it, no one man should have all that power.
Wingman Power Rankings.
All right, let's check in on our updated power rankings, and there wasn't too much movement from last week, as we have Amazing Spidey is still at the top of the power rankings, followed closely by They Took Our Jobs. King George is still setting strong at 3rd, while Red Sox Nation is in 4th. Mac Daddies has moved up to 5th, while Cubert Rage is in 6th. Tompa Brady is in 7th. Lion Eyes in 8th. Team B is 9, and Waddle Away is in 10th in terms of power rankings. Remember, these are just your projected points and how Yahoo values your team. All right, now it is my pleasure to bring in our guests who will join me at the bar, Mr. Ken T, a.k.a. Tompa Brady. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me at the bar. May I ask you, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking some Cabernet. I've been hanging out with my wife tonight. It's our anniversary tomorrow. So.
Oh, nice. Happy. Great. Happy anniversary. Thank you for taking a few minutes from me here tonight. I appreciate it.
Of course. She wanted to go to sleep.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get right into it here. I usually like to look at our managers' schedules and draft boards when we get ready for these interviews at the bar. So I'm going to start out with, I'm looking at your draft board here, and I see your first pick was Jamar Chase. So now that we're 10 weeks past, how would you assess the play of your number 1 pick this year in Jamar Chase? Would you say it's status quo, or are you a bit disappointed?
I am very disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, give me a second with this plane passes by. My bad.
Sure. No, that's fine. That's fine. That's part of that's good.
Yeah, so I typically don't like to do homer picks with anybody that's one of my top 3 or 4 players, picking Dolphin players.
Right.
And a very good reason for that is offensively they've been horrible for 20 years.
Right.
So I know this year I kind of totally intended to take Hill because all the other players I possibly would have wanted would probably be gone. And I also don't like picking the same player I had the year before that often. I do sometimes, but not often.
Right.
And Eckler was the other pick. But honestly, Alex threw me for a loop by picking Atlanta's running back.
Oh, yep.
And I did not think Chase would be there. And I was like, oh, he was awesome last year. can't pass on Chase, and so I made a quick gut decision to do that, and I feel like I've been regretting it the whole season.
Well, he's been a little up and down. He's had some duds. He's had some big games, but a player like that, you can't truly assess until the end of your season because he might get hot those last 4 games when you need him most, and it might make all the difference.
You know, I don't know if you know, I have season tickets.
Right.
So
Okay.
I go to all the home games, and I bought the tickets because I thought once Flores left, this offense would turn on, and they looked like they were about to turn on with him, and
Right.
he's a defensive coach. And I was like, I'm going to get in, kind of like buying early, right, where it's
Mhm.
cheap, and that's partially true but they raise prices every year.
Mhm.
But I got in when I could pick my seats or whatever, and I kind of knew they'd be explosive, and they were last year whenever Tua was in,
Right. Right.
and I could have watched my own fantasy player down on the field, and I chose not to do that.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, Tariq Hill's been awesome. We'll see how they finish up. Right now, you're tied with the Red Sox Nation who has Hill, so you guys are in the same boat, at least record wise. So we'll see how it plays out in the second half of the season. But so far, I guess if you're going to be even, might as well have a rooting interest. But like you said, you're kind of afraid to root for your Dolphins players because they let you down so many times.
Oh no, I'll gladly like tank the rest of the fantasy season if the Dolphins like just win every week. That's
Okay. All right. My next question here for you is I noticed this week you're playing Red Sox Nation, who you're tied for the last playoff spot. So this will be the second time in the last 3 weeks that you're playing against a team that you're tied with for the last playoff spot. 2 weeks ago was Alex's They Took Our Jobs, and he was able to beat you, so you dropped out of the playoffs. Now you're back in, and you're up against Red Sox Nation. So the winner of this game will solidify a good chance to make the playoffs, while the loser is going to have to battle back in these last 3 weeks.
Yeah, man. I am a team dying to get kicked, either barely make the playoffs and lose in the first week, or just get lucky, or just miss the playoffs. I'm one of those teams, man. I have a good week. I have good and bad weeks. Last week was a great week. I wish I had played you with that score.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was our third highest score of the week of the season with 151 points, I think it was approximately. So that was a monster showing last week for you.
It was crazy.
And
When your kicker puts up over 20 points, you have to
well, I,
smile.
well, I was looking because I knew I was going to be streaming that kicker, but I was waiting the last minute because I was hoping maybe I could pick him up without having to drop the Miami defense, depending on IR spots and stuff. So I waited, and then I think you and Reggie and I think maybe Alex all picked up kickers, but none of you picked up the kicker I was looking at. But you picked up the best one with Jason Myers at 21 points. That was pretty awesome.
Total luck, man.
Not only that, but I think 3 of the 4 streaming kickers all kicked game-winning field goals at the buzzer. So we all picked up big-time performers last week. The people who picked up kickers on the free agent list.
I gave him my only Dolphin player for him, and I don't think I'm going back.
Well, that's what I did. I gave the Dolphins defense to get him, and I really like the Dolphins defense. They've got a lot of good players anyway, so they have a chance to get some turnovers and maybe some touchdowns, hopefully. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, so I was also looking at your schedule. You've pretty much won one, lost one. Like you said, your team's been a little inconsistent with some good scores and bad scores, but you have yet to have a 2-game winning streak. But you have a chance to do it this week. If you win this week, you'll have your first 2-game winning streak of the season.
Well, I'm playing Jimerson, you said, right?
You are, yes.
Yeah, for the past 2 years, I pretty much lose to Jimerson at the end of the season so that he can make the playoffs. I don't think this will be any different.
Well, you guys both have a low projected. You're off to a slow start, but so is he. So you're definitely still in it right now through the Thursday night game.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I set my roster really early in the week. I haven't checked to see if there's any news that I should change things around.
I haven't noticed anything regarding to any of our rosters, but I'll double check that a little bit closer to Sunday for sure.
Yeah, of course.
And then last week, how you said you go up and down. Last week, as we mentioned, you had 151 points, which was amazing. Not only that, though, was third highest score of the season. You went up against the team B, who had the lowest score of the season. So you had the biggest blowout in our league's history at 102 points.
Awesome. Awesome. You know, Bernie, you wanted Dobbs. I wanted Waddle. You should have done it. It wouldn't have changed the score for you. It wouldn't have changed it, but you would have had a quarterback that you might be able to stop streaming.
So that's funny that you even mentioned that, because as I was thinking of all the trade offers I've made this year and stuff, that all of my best trades are the ones that I offer to Bernie that he rejects. Every player I want does bad, and every player he keeps the bad guy, and my guy does fine.
Yeah, yeah. He offered me. It was funny because I traded you on the week I was playing you. He wanted to trade me on the week I was playing him.
Mhm.
And you know, Bernie's team, it's hard to like a lot of his players. and but there's a couple on there, and of course, like I regret not picking up Hill, and actually I regret not picking up Tua too because I should have taken him instead of Lawrence. But I was like, I know Waddle's not that great this year from a fantasy perspective, and but I was like, I like to have one player on my team that's worth starting,
Right.
and but I wasn't gonna like just give away this quarterback because I might even bench Herbert for him, honestly.
He's been playing great, especially. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you too. If you now that you have Herbert, are you going to stick with him as like an every week thing, or are you going to kind of check the matchups or see how they're playing? It sounds like you're going to keep an open mind to maybe switching back and forth depending on how you're feeling or with their matchups.
It's a hard thing with a rookie quarterback, or rookie, but a new quarterback.
Right.
They can go on these tears, and it's hard to tell. But it kind of looks like Dobbs has got a little thing, like he's lost the fear, and so
Mhm.
he's willing to play like he's in college, right? And
Right.
in your league doesn't have any minus points, so even
Right.
if he slings, it's not dangerous for me,
Mhm.
except that he won't get touchdowns. And so I'm on the fence there because I also have Keenan Allen, so it's like it's a little double whammy whenever
Mhm.
he scores. And so I'm going to look at matchups. I think if if the Chargers are playing a big defensive team, that's I'll probably bench him.
Gotcha. I was going to mention with your big 150 point week last week. Right now you're in a four-way tie for fourth place technically. So that big score last week really went a long way to get you back into strong position in terms of tiebreaker points, because you were kind of starting to fade a little bit, and now you're right back up there, only I think 12 points behind Jimerson for fourth place.
Sweet.
And then you
That's great
separate.
news.
Yeah, and then I think you separated from Reggie by about 60 points. So I mean, you could still be caught in any one week, but that was a night because Reggie had 134 points last week. But even with his big game, you still expanded on your tiebreaker lead over him.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's surprising. Last year, I didn't have super high points, but I was very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every week was high 90s, low like to 110 max. But it was like within a 15-point spread the whole season.
Right.
But this year, I'm all over the place. All over the place. I'll be in like 70s or low 80s, and then I'll be at 152 the next week. I'm like, man, I didn't draft my team to be this inconsistent.
Right. You alluded to it earlier when you were talking about potentially which quarterback you're going to play, but I was going to ask you, especially after last week, how are you liking your LA Chargers stack with Herbert and Allen getting double points?
Oh, it's awesome, man. Allen by far was my best pick. I don't even know which pick he was, but he definitely wasn't my first two. I don't
He was
think.
your fifth pick.
Yeah, and he's
He's been
like
awesome. Yeah.
he's pretty much like my best player every week.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, with Herbert now, it's like if he throws, I'm getting the points on both sides, but I found it doesn't matter. The score is a score, right?
Yeah.
It's just that I can't play against him, right? That's the biggest catch. If your quarterback's throwing to my receiver, you're like, whatever points I get, whichever side you're on,
Right.
it hurts you. So
you get negated. So now you get the full benefit of it.
Yeah, now when I'm playing people, it's unlike unless I'm playing Eckler, like it's like Chargers offense always needs to be on the field.
There you go. Yep. All right. So if you don't mind, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but we started a segment a couple weeks ago called our mailbag. So if you wouldn't mind, would you join me on answering some mailbag questions?
Do it.
All right.
You've got mail. Wingman Fantasy Football.
Mailbag! All right. Our first one comes in from Keith, our loyal subscriber on YouTube here. And this is a YouTube comment. And his message is this: have you ever been so bad at something, but you just keep doing it? Because I have. So I know Bernie's having a tough season, and I just want to let him know that we appreciate his support to the channel and the show, and we wish him the best of luck going forward. Keep your head up, buddy. We're all rooting for you, unless you're playing against us, but you're done playing against both me and Ken, so we're rooting for you.
Sure. Beat everybody else up there.
Yeah, beat all the people that Ken's tied with for that last playoff spot, and it'll go a long way.
He won't, because I didn't give him Dobbs.
Okay. Right. All right, we've got one more. This is a light mailbag this week. This one's actually addressed to you, Ken. This one comes in from Mike. It says, "Hey Ken, how would you assess our trade now that a couple of weeks have gone by?" Now, just to make this clear, this is the Derrick Henry for Justin Herbert. Essentially, that was the trade we made. All right, go ahead.
Honestly, in the short term, it looks like I could have just played Dobbs and had almost the same score and had Henry. But then last week, I probably wouldn't have started Henry, and Henry, I think, did not play well.
No, he only had 2.5 points. Yeah.
Right. And but I'm really weak at running back. I'm Najee Harris is my best running back.
He's been getting hot though. He's been playing a lot better lately.
He is getting better lately. I just worry that this is like a 3 or 4 game streak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to pan out for me. And then, so I haven't made up my mind. One good thing about Herbert, to be honest though, is I feel like he's always going to score me those minimum points, 17 points. Whereas Dobbs, I feel like, man, he's going to have he's young. He's going to have a bad day.
Right. It's coming. Right? Or potentially.
It's going to be like 9 points, where Herbert on a bad day will still throw 16 points. Right. So I like consistency over big jumps and then nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
So this season has been painful, but so I'm still on the fence, Mike, to be fair, but so far I'm playing him. So
right. Well, this week's going to be big because he had one bad week and one good week. So if he can have a second good week, that'll make it feel a little better, at least if he's 2 for 3 with good weeks.
This is true.
All right, my man. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I appreciate you taking some time away from your pre-anniversary night. I definitely appreciate that. So thank you.
All right. Well, Mike, thanks for having me, man. I always enjoy it.
I appreciate it. All right. Thank you. All right. I want to give a big thank you to Mr. Ken T, a.k.a. Tompa Brady. Remember, guys, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, and now Google Podcasts. Just search Wingman The League on those podcast platforms to find our content. If you want to see any of our video feeds, go to wingmanentertainment.net/WFF or /podcast. Also, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Wingman Fantasy Football. All right, guys, with that being said, may your mugs be frosty and your glasses be full and your mugs stay frosty. And we will see you next time.